So I think we should start. Gert is going to make one or two introductory remarks and then I will say something as well. Okay, so Gert, aan die gang. Wat nou?
Goeiemôre collega's, goeiemôre lede van die pers, ons vriende daar buite, almal deel van die groen familie. Daar's 'n ou gesegde wat sê, cometh the moment, cometh the man. En dit is vanmôre vir my 'n wonderlike voorreg om aan u bekend te stel, Dr. Corneille Mulder, wie genomineer is as VF Plus premierskandidaat vir die Wes Kaap. Nou kom ek gee vir 'n bietjie agtergrond inligting oor Dr. Mulder. Dr. Mulder is 'n parlementslid en Wes Kaap se leier van die VF Plus en hy is ons aangewese kandidaat dan vir die verkiesing op 29 Mei vanjaar. Dr. Mulder beklee die eerste posisie op die VF Plus se lys vir die Wes Kaap se parlement. Dr. Mulder is tans die VF Plus se parlementêre hoofsweep en is ook die langsdienendste parlementlid met meer as 36 jaar se ononderbroke diens. Voorwaar 'n rekord om op baie trots te wees. Hy is akademies baie goed onderlê. Hy beskik oor 'n B.Jurisgraad, 'n LLB en ook 'n LLD doktorsgraad in staatsreg, constitutional law, wat hy alreeds op die jeugdige ouderdom van 26 behaal het. En hy spesialiseer in grondwet en grondwetlike modelle. Hy is ook 'n toegelate prokureur in die Hooggeregshof van Suid-Afrika. Dr. Mulder het oor die laaste jare 'n huishoudelike naam geword met die rol wat hy gespeel het in onderhandelinge en samestelling van veelparty koalisies wat die eerste keer in 3 dekades 'n werklike hoop bied om die ANC te ontsetel. Dus, sonder enige verdere gesprekke, stel ek aan u voor Dr. Corneille Mulder. Baie dankie.
Dankie Gert, ek gaan daar kom sit. Mag dan. Vriende, goeiemôre. Baie dankie Gert vir die vriendelike woorde en baie dankie vir die geleentheid. Ek wil goeiemôre sê ook vir die kollegas wat hier is vanoggend. 2 onderburgemeesters, 'n jeuglid, 'n ander raadslid, nog 'n raadslid. Ek verstaan meneer Pieter Maree gaan ook by ons aansluit binne enige oomblikke van nou af. Hy het 'n ander verpligting eers gehad vanoggend. So ek sê vir almal baie dankie, ook vir die lede van die pers wat teenwoordig is. Baie dankie. Ek dink dit is belangrik waar ons in die verkiesing ingaan dat ons dinge op die regte manier doen. En dit is so dat die verkiesing van 29 Mei is 'n verkiesing wat gaan plaasvind op uitelik 10 verkiesings op dieselfde dag. Dis 'n verkiesing op nasionale vlak, maar ook 'n verkiesing in al 9 provinsies. Ek self is verantwoordelik vir die verkiesing saam met my mense en my span hier in die Wes Kaap en ons is baie ernstig oor ons veldtog in die Wes Kaap en ons is van plan om 'n groot verskil te maak in die Wes Kaap. Nou, dit is so dat die VF Plus het sy nasionale veldtog wat geloods word rondom en reeds geloods is by die manifest bekendstelling vroeër. En dit handel spesifiek met die hele gedagte van herstel en opbou in Suid-Afrika, herbou in Suid-Afrika. So ons is met daardie proses besig, maar dit is ook so dat ons in die Wes Kaap ons eie unieke veldtog het rondom ons subtemas in die Wes Kaap wat van belang is. Nee, maar kom sit gerus. Hier's nog kollegas van die media, kom gerus eers in. Kom ons gee 'n kans dat almal kan sit. Pieter, goeiemôre. Goed gegaan met jou. Ja, maar het ons vanoggend verteenwoordig by Cape Talk. Ons is bly dat dit goed afgeloop het. Ek het goeie verslag daarvan teruggekry. Pieter, baie dankie daarvoor. So, in die Wes Kaap voer ons ook ons eie veldtog met 'n eie subtema. En ons doen dit in die vorm van wat ek wil noem 'n plegtige onderneming, in Engels 'n pledge. En dit is 'n pledge wat ons as Wes Kaap se VF Plus onderskryf en onderteken. En ek rig 'n uitdaging aan die premierskandidaat van elke ander party wat in die Wes Kaap deelneem in hierdie verkiesing om dieselfde plegtige onderneming te onderteken en hulle daartoe te verbind. En die doel van die pledge of die plegtige onderneming is basies om aan te spreek wat ons identifiseer as die werklike kernvraagstukke wat die kieserspubliek in die Wes Kaap raak. En ek gaan dit vinnig deurgaan, ek gaan dit behandel, Kortliks, dit is 10 verskillende punte en daarna sal ons uit die aard van die saak geleentheid gee vir enige vrae wat daar mag wees. So die plegtige onderneming sê in die eerste plek, punt 1, ons onderneem en om ons te beywer vir die bevordering en die uitbou van Christelike beginsels en waardes in ons gemeenskappe. Die tweede een, ons beywer ons vir die daarstelling van 'n deursigtige en verteenwoordigende koalisieregering in die Wes Kaap, wat enige poging van die ANC en die EFF en hulle vennote om provinsiale mag in die Wes Kaap te bekom, sal teenstaan en sal beveg. Ek wil net oor daardie punt sê, koalisies het gekom om te bly, en moenie vir 'n oomblik dink dat die Wes Kaap nie ook waarskynlik moontlik in 'n koalisieregering sal ingaan nie. Die meningspeilings dat dit aan, daar's geen rede hoekom die Wes Kaap anders sal wees nie, maar die Vryheidsfront Plus in die Wes Kaap verbind ons om ons mag en ondersteuning wat ons gaan kry in die verkiesing te gebruik, om seker te maak dat die ANC, die EFF en hulle meelopers nie die mag in die Wes Kaap in die hande kry nie. Ons sal sorg dat die Wes Kaap in veilige hande bly. Die derde plek is ons verbind tot die vryheid vir al die mense in die Wes Kaap. En ons sal opmerk op ons plakaatveld, praat ons en ons sê, die slagspreuk sê, kies vryheid, choose freedom. En wat se vryheid praat ons van? Ons praat van meer as een tipe vryheid. Kyk wat ek sê in punt 3. Vryheid vir al die mense van die Wes Kaap. Vryheid van werkloosheid, vryheid van armoede, vryheid van dwelms, vryheid van geweld en sosiale onstabiliteit en vryheid om oor ons eie taal en kultuurwaardes te beskik. Ons wil graag hê dat ons gemeenskappe vry word van al daardie ewels wat ons mense verlam oor baie dekades in die Wes Kaap. In die vierde plek, hoe kan ons dit reg? Ons kan dit net reg kry deur regverdige ekonomiese deelname vir almal, wat insluit entrepreneur en mentorprogramme, as ook befondsingsprojekte vir nuwe ondernemings wat werk aan plaaslike gemeenskappe kan verskaf. Die skep van voordelige aansporingsmaatreëls vir maatskappye wat hulle self in die Wes Kaap wil hervestig, en dan baie belangrik wat relevant is vir al ons Wes Kaap, die terugbring van klerefabrieke en die klerebedryf, wat 'n sleutelrol vir baie dekades gespeel het in die Wes Kaap, as ook die beperking op invoere van goedkoop klereprodukte uit China, wat daardie bedryf van ons vernietig het. Die terugplaas van die visbedryf, ook in die hande van plaaslike gemeenskappe, net so 'n belangrike punt vir die Wes Kaap. Vyfdens, familie eerste gemeenskapsnetwerke, die skep van programme om veilige gemeenskappe te verseker, die skep van werksgeleenthede en die bevordering van Christelike familiewaardes en ondersteuningsstelsel om geslags- en huishoudelike geweld te voorkom, iets wat 'n ernstige probleem in die Wes Kaap is as gevolg van sosiale omstandighede. In die 6de plek, 'n Innocence Project, ons praat van 'n onskuldprojek, om die jeug teen onaanvaarbare gebruike te beskerm, om ons skole terug te neem met bevoegde skoolbeheerliggame en direkte gemeenskapsbetrokkenheid. Verseker 'n veilige speelplek omgewing vir al die kinders en roei afknouery en groepsdruk, boelie uit. Bemagtig ons jeug en bevorder moedertaalonderrig sonder inmenging van die regering. Die regering het niks te maak met die opvoeding van die kinders in die Wes Kaap. In die 7de plek, bring wet en orde terug. Dit beteken stop die bendegeweld en skietvoorvalle in ons gemeenskappe, wat elke dag totale chaos veroorsaak, en bring hoogs opgeleide gespesialiseerde eenhede in die polisiediens in, wat dit kan uitroei. In die 8de plek, wat 'n sensitiewe een is, ontmoedig die toegang van onwettige immigrante in die Wes Kaap, wat die werk van ons burgers afvat. Ons stel ons burgers in die Wes Kaap eerste. In die 8de plek, die Trankra landelike gebiede. Dit is die wet op die transformasie van sekere landelike gebiede. Ons is ten gunste daarvan om dit oor te dra aan die inheemse grond wat daaroor beskik het, en hierdie grond moet nou aan die betrokke gemeenskappe teruggegee word. Byvoorbeeld, die van Genadendal, Kniel, Pella ensovoorts, daar is 23 sodanige gebiede. Ons verbind ons ook tot die vind van unieke behuisingsoplossings in die samewerking met ons verskillende gemeenskappe. Behuising is 'n ernstige knelpunt in die Wes Kaap wat nie aangespreek word effektief nie. In die 10de plek, wat ook gaan oor vryheid. Die reg van die inwoners van die Wes Kaap om hulle self te bemagtig en self 'n keuse uit te oefen rondom hulle vryheidsstrewe deur federalisme, lokaliteit, subsidiariteit, selfbeskikking, soos wat dit internasionaal in die wêreld voorkom. Daar's verskillende forme en vlakke daarvan, al die forme daarvan. En dan laastens die beplanning en organisering vir 'n referendumproses in die Wes Kaap, as 'n stap tot die selfseggenskap van die Wes Kaap. Die hele gedagte van 'n referendumproses is bitter belangrik, daar's groot ondersteuning daarvoor en ek dink dit moet bevorder word. Dit is baie kortliks 10 punte wat ons praat van 'n pledge wat ons onderteken, En wat ek 'n uitdaging rig aan die ander premierskandidaate, daar's 28 partye wat in die Wes Kaap deelneem aan hierdie verkiesing. En ek sal graag wil sien wie van hulle is bereid om dit te verbind tot hierdie standpunte en hierdie punte wat in belang van die mense van die Wes Kaap is. Ek nooi hulle elkeen uit en soos wat die verkiesingsveld tog vorder, sal ons verslag doen oor wie teken en wie teken nie. Van my kant af baie dankie. Gert, oor na jou toe as ons dalk enige vrae het. Is julle welkom. Ek kan alles in Engels herhaal as dit nodig is, maar die verklaring is in Engels beskikbaar. Ek weet nie if it's necessary we can repeat in English. Is there any need for that?
No, we'll see through the questions.
We'll see through the questions. Okay, the questions we'll try to deal with that in English as well. Gert, as jy wil hoor of daar enige vrae is, dan praat ons.
Any questions?
Christian.
Dr. Mulder, I see that on your election posters over there, Cape Exit is
Yes.
also appearing there. So
Yes.
is the FF Plus working with Cape Exit?
Yes.
And why is that? Why is that so important? And on the issue of Cape independence, is it something that you support as the Freedom Front Plus?
The Freedom Front Plus clearly states in our manifesto on national level as well, that we are a party that stand for self-determination and for the furtherance of that ideal. But the important thing is to understand that self-determination, there are different forms of self-determination. Soos wat ons baie keer sê, dit is nie 'n kwessie van 'n of benadering. Dit is nie of Wes-Kaapse onafhanklikheid of iets anders nie, dis en. Die Vryheidsfront Plus is ook 'n nasionale party wat landwyd deelneem en landwyd steun het. En dit is net so dat verskillende dele van die land kwalifiseer vir ander forme of vlakke van selfbeskikking. Daarom sê ons ondersteun die gedagte van Cape Exit, waarmee Cape Exit besig is. Dit is 'n proses. Vryheid en onafhanklikheid is nie iets wat oornag gebeur nie. Iemand lei nie 'n klok en môreoggend het dit gebeur nie. Dit werk nie so nie. Daar is sekere prosesse wat jy deurgaan en deel daarvan is 'n referendum. En ons onderskryf dit, ons ondersteun dit en enigeen wat die politiek in die Wes-Kaap volg, will know that there is a strong movement towards the idea of self-determination and the necessity to have a referendum in the Western Cape. The organisation Cape Exit has been busy with this for the last couple of years. They have a support base and they have clearly indicated that they are prepared to ask their membership to vote and support political parties that express themselves in favour of that kind of approach. And we are not shy to do that. We are going to do exactly that. En dit is hoekom ons plakkaat ook baie duidelik sê, kies vryheid, choose freedom. Want daardie vryheid gaan nie net oor die staatkundige vryheid nie, maar ook op die sosiaal-maatskaplike deel van mense wat onderdruk is en wat ons onsself daarvan ook bevry. Dit speel die totale werklikheid aan van die mense in die Wes-Kaap.
Next one.
Dr. Mulder, firstly, sorry, I have not looked at your party list, so please
Sure,
forgive me if this
sure.
question is my own
No problem.
ignorance. But do we then assume that Mr. Murray is retiring from?
No.
Is he still on the list? And
Yes.
Okay, and then just back to you. Does this, either way, however this plays out, do we then see this as you exiting from Parliament after almost 40 years,
Yes.
however it plays out, or is this, do you only move to the provincial legislature if you were to become the Premier?
Yes. First of all, Mr. Murray is not retiring, not at all. Mr. Murray is a pillar in the Western Cape. He played his role very effectively over many decades in the Western Cape within different political parties. When he was the Premier, he was Mayor of Cape Town, etc. And he's a pillar within the Freedom Front Plus and our structures. Mr. Murray is a candidate on our list and we intend to get enough people elected so that Mr. Murray can also go back to the Western Province Legislature, or who knows, maybe you could show up in the National Council of Provinces. Nobody knows what could happen, but those kind of decisions will be taken after the election results are known. So that's the first question. So that's why Mr. Murray is here with us today and he's playing his role as always. With regard to myself, in all the elections in the past, I served on all the lists, national, regional, as well as in the provincial list. It was like that in the previous parliament as well, in the previous election, and it's the same in this election. However, it's the first election where I am acting as the premier candidate. I haven't done so in any previous election. I am also serving as a chief whip of parliament, but now I've been appointed as the premier candidate in this province, and I'm taking it very seriously. I'm not here for fun and games. I am absolutely convinced that after this election we will also see a coalition government in the Western Cape. If we succeed in doing that, the Freedom Front Plus will be part of that government, and we will obviously have to deploy people to that government that can do the job. So at this stage, it's difficult and maybe premature to say exactly how this will play out. We'll see how that plays out. It could be, and I'm honest with you, that we also and most likely will find a coalition on national level. And if we succeed in the multi-party charter to form a coalition government on that level, there may also be some decisions perhaps to be taken in that regard. I don't know. So at this stage, it's difficult to give a final answer, but I think we keep all options open. But in the meantime, all my attention will be in this campaign for the Freedom Front Plus in the Western Cape. We are serious. You'll see that there are 28 political parties participating in this election. I have divided them into what I call A team, B team, and C team. And there are not many in the A team. The Freedom Front Plus is in the A team, and I will be challenging all the other candidates in this process.
I'm Sue McKinnon from Sunday Times. And to Samuta, can you please repeat your response to the kid exit and
Yes.
that question in English?
I'll try to do so.
In English. But also, in terms of, let's say you manage to get this referendum going, don't we need an amendment to the Constitution of the Republic, or would it just be as a Western Cape thing?
Sure.
How would that work?
Sure.
And I also have a question on the polling. I don't know if you're doing your internal polling. In the last election, you received just less than 60,000 votes in the Western Cape. So what is your polling showing you, and what are you aiming for this time around?
Sure.
And then can you just unpack, I really still trying to understand the multi-party charter. Because I see in your statement you talk about blocking the ANC EFF coalition from taking over.
Yes.
What about the DA? Are you not trying to stop the DA? Are you not trying to maybe reduce their majority? But also, how does it work? I mean, I see Mr. Stevenson saying smaller parties that contest in the Western Cape are actually dividing that vote and you're making the ANC more stronger because you are. Can you respond to that comment that you're contributing?
This could take a while.
Sorry.
No problem. Let me try to do that. Let me start off first of all with regard to what you asked. Is there an amendment to the Constitution necessary? Interesting, people sometimes talk about this Constitution as the final Constitution. And I always take exception to that, because there's no such thing as a final Constitution. It doesn't exist. It's only the current Constitution. And history will tell you that constitutions are amended from time to time, constitutions are changed, and constitutions are only vehicles that last as long as they serve the purpose for which they were created in the first instance. So the political landscape may change. You'll remember South Africa had a previous constitution before 1994, and because the landscape changed, it needed to be amended and changed, and we've got the current one. So at this moment, Section 235 in the Constitution makes it possible for what we are striving for. In other words, it clearly states any community bound by a common cultural language, etc., are entitled to forms of self-determination. We understand that it will need to be a process that needs to be negotiated as well. But before you can go into those kind of negotiations, you first need to test the will of the people in that area, because we don't know if there is support for this. And I can't understand why some parties, including the DA, are shying away from a referendum. Allow the people of the Western Cape to express themselves. And if the majority says we don't want this, then we have to accept and understand that. But why shy away? So first of all, you need to test the will of the people in the province. Then secondly, you will go into negotiations with the government of South Africa and with all relevant parties, etc. That's the way it works, because the first prize will always remain an internationally recognized, negotiated settlement that creates a reality that we can work with and live with. The people in the Western Cape does not want to live in conflict or whatever with anybody else. We want to live in harmony and create a beautiful South Africa. And who knows? It may just be that KZN may at some stage feel the same. Nobody knows. The problem is at the moment we've got a very centralized state. If South Africa was a federal state, it may have been different, but we are not. Everything is centralized. So that's the first point. But one must also understand, in terms of international law, there are other criteria that also plays a role. Everybody and the ANC has signed those accords and those kind of conventions that says people are entitled to exercise their right to self-determination. So there are all kinds of processes that can also be followed. Secondly, with regard to the party support, you are correct. The last poll that I saw, that was about 2 weeks ago, was done by the foundation that is headed by Dr. Frans Cronje, and the poll was done by, I can't remember the polling company's name, but it's the one being run by Gareth van Onselen. And in that poll, they found that the DA was at 53%. I think the ANC was something like 18 or something around there. The EFF was at 10%, and they polled the Freedom Front Plus at 7%. 7% is substantial. We are very happy about that, but that is not what we aim for. We aim for more. We aim for at least 10%. And if you look at the Western Cape legislature, it consists of 42 members at the moment. The DA currently has got 24 seats. If they lose 3 seats, it's a 50-50 split between them and the opposition. So I've got no doubt, if you look at the new role players in the process here, the Patriotic Alliance, the inroads they are making, Rise Mzansi, Action SA, Marius Fransman, there are a number of other parties all making inroads. I think it's highly likely that the DA will go below 50% and they will need coalition partners. And that's why we express ourselves willing to be such a partner, having a track record of being a reliable coalition partner. As a matter of fact, I expressed the same goal before the 2021 local government elections. And I said, I think it's in the best interest of the communities that we do have coalition governments on local level. So after that election, we found ourselves where we are today, that we serve in 11 coalition governments in the Western Cape at this moment. Of the 30 councils, we are in coalition governments in 11 with the Democratic Alliance. You will not read about most of them in the press because they are successful. It's not like what you've heard in Johannesburg or Ekurhuleni. These things are functioning. And on a lighter note, on your left and on your right sits 2 deputy mayors at the moment, serving in these coalition governments. So we are playing that kind of role. The same there with the gentleman opposite you is on a coalition government in Matsikama. So I really believe that I think Mr. Steenhuisen is making a mistake. The DA does not have a right to claim that because they are the DA, everybody must now support the DA in the Western Cape. Why should we do that? It is not as if the DA is the best government since the creation of the earth. It's not true. They are better than the ANC. The question is, how difficult could that be? So I understand that the Western Cape is doing quite well, but we can do much better. And the Freedom Front Plus believes that if we go in a coalition with the Democratic Alliance, that it will be better. And if you look at the Constitution, in the founding provisions, as well as in other provisions, our whole system is based on the idea of multi-party democracy. So why would we support multi-party democracy in South Africa, but in the Western Cape it must be one-party democracy, the DA? No, it doesn't work that way. So we are not opposing anybody. We are putting positively and constructively our own case, and we believe we've got a constructive and a positive case. Other parties are welcome to bring their pledges and indicate where they can do better than we are doing in terms of what we intend to do, and we will take it further from there. I think, and then you asked about the Cape exit issue, and you wanted me to respond in English. Let me try to do that. Anybody that follows politics in the Western Cape will know that there is a rather strong movement with regard to Cape exit, Cape independence, and it takes different forms. We've got 1 or 2 other political parties that support that, and there is a very strong civil society organization called Cape Exit themselves. They've got a support base of many, many people that have pledged their support to that organization. And all they're asking is the right to have a referendum to allow the people in the Western Cape to express themselves. And I can't think of any reason why one would deny them that right to express themselves. We say we believe in a democracy, and we should do so. So the Freedom Front Plus, on our national level, in our national manifesto, which we launched on the 2nd of March, also refers specifically to the expression of self-determination. We specifically refers to the Cape exit situation and say we support that. And obviously we believe that it should be a constructive process in the best interest of the inhabitants, of all the inhabitants of the Western Cape. And we think it's doable. The DA will in this election have to explain to the electorate if they continue to refuse them the right to express themselves in the referendum.
And if
Yeah,
see
sure.
because this Cape Exit idea it's been coming along a while.
Yes.
It was Cape Independence and then it became Cape, and it's quite radical. So just to be 100% sure about what it is exactly are you supporting?
Okay.
I mean, is it more, even though this is not a federal country, but more along the lines of how a federal state
Sure.
would work?
Sure.
Or are you talking a complete divorce?
No.
And then a second question, politics in this province is very much along racial lines. In the 2019, 2021, Mr. Marais joined you, Mr. Max joined you, and there was a concerted drive
Yes.
to woo and possibly
Absolutely.
take away from the DA the coloured vote, which is really the big vote in this province.
Yes.
Going into this election, what is your strategy as regards
That specific issue. Okay, let me start off with that question, the second question first. We are even more committed in this election to reaching out to all communities in the Western Cape. And specifically in the Western Cape, it's just the fact, it's a demographic fact that the coloured community forms the majority. Anyone that thinks they can play a role in this province without support or significant support in the coloured community is making a big mistake. So, around the table, the second person after me on this list is that young gentleman there, Mr. Grant Marais, who's currently serving in the metro of the Western Cape, of Cape Town, and he's about to enter provincial politics. So we are very serious in taking that to the next level. Many of our candidates come from the coloured community, if I may put it that way, and you'll see that in our pledge, basically almost the majority of the points specifically refer to challenging issues in the coloured community in terms of social challenges, in terms of crime, in terms of drugs, in terms of all the things that are absolutely speaking to that community. So we are very much committed to that. The fact that I'm the premier candidate, as far as that is concerned, I don't think it plays a role, because the Freedom Front Plus is very serious that we are also a non-racial party. Even though our constitution was written and when the party was formed in 1994, it stipulated from day one, any South African citizen, anyone, 16 years and older that subscribes to the party's ideals are welcome to join the party. That has never changed. And we stay committed to that. It will always be the case. And Mr. Marais, sitting right next to me here, he knows that he became my political mentor. Even me, having been in Parliament for quite a while, also needs a political mentor, and I am very happy to say that Mr. Marais plays that role. So we're very committed to that. Let me get to the question of Cape Exit. What one person may feel is radical, somebody else may say it's just normal. It's just something that needs to be done. It depends on how you look at South Africa. If we look at South Africa and remain to say that South Africa is this one undivided constitutional creation created in 1910, and we are committed, regardless, we have to stick to this, then any idea of an exit of any province becomes a radical thing, and I understand that. However, things change, politics change, and we never know what may play out. And as I've said earlier, if South Africa was a very strong federal state with powers emanating from the bottom up with a very small national government, most likely there would not have been a need, or people may have not said we feel strongly about this, but we've had the opposite, exact opposite now for 30 years, and that's why it's growing. And I'm also putting the facts on the table, and I'm looking objectively at it. If, for example, anything is possible, if, for example, the MK party and the EFF do so well in this election that they are capable of forming a government on national level with the ANC, for example, I don't think things are going to improve in South Africa. They will get worse. And I can guarantee you, the moment then that happens, Cape Exit will become an even stronger reality on the table. Because people feel strongly about their way of life, they feel strongly about their values, and they are not going to allow themselves to be dominated by people who they not necessarily agree with in terms of that. And if you look at the voting pattern of the Western Cape, the people in the Western Cape has never democratically elected the ANC as government in this province. We've been ruled despite the fact that they've never voted for the ANC. So it's difficult to say exactly where that will go. But we need to start at the beginning. And if there is no real traction or no real support, then a referendum will clearly indicate that. And that will settle it until who knows what happens in the future. But we cannot take this off the table, and from the party's point of view, we are very strongly about self-determination for communities. And who knows, we may all get surprised, a big surprise, that while the Western Cape still thinks about the referendum, things may overnight happen in KZN. And KZN may go its own way. You never know. Let's see how politics play out. Whatever way it goes, in the end, we will all still find ourselves in this part of Africa, and we will all still have to cooperate with one another and work together economically and try to prevent conflict, and whatever the case may be. We are serious about that as well. But if you look at, and I was looking in the last couple of days about the wonderful series on Netflix I made time when I tried to break away, about the Cold War and the whole nuclear crisis in that regard. Go and look what happened in the Baltic states. The Baltic states were offered, when the Soviet Union broke up, they were offered more federal powers, etc., etc. And they said, at that stage, sorry, it's too late. We will not be happy without anything but independence. That's what happened in the Baltics. I'm not saying it's going to happen in the different parts of South Africa. Maybe no, maybe yes, I don't know. But if we succeed with regard to the multi-party charter, on the other hand, and we get a good government, and I didn't answer that question about the multi-party charter, I'll come back to that, and things go well in South Africa, things are turned around for the better, it's just the reality, then most likely the need or the support for this will go down. But I think there should be no doubt that the people in the Western Cape are not going to sit back and allow themselves to be forced into a position where they lose everything that is important to them in terms of their way of life, their culture, their traditions, etc. And you must understand, the Western Cape is really different in that regard. People don't realize that. If you take the towns in the Western Cape, none of their names have changed. None of them have changed. It's still Stellenbosch, it's still Swellendam. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Why is it a good thing that those names need to be changed? It means that they still are there, and as long as they are being accepted by the people of the Western Cape, let's accommodate that. So no one can predict how the whole question of Cape Exit is going to play out. What I can tell you is there's a strong support base building up. And if you look at the opinion polls that they have done from their side, and one can question the polls or not, it seems that they claim that more than half of the DA supporters support Cape Exit, but they still vote for the Democratic Alliance. That's fascinating. So it's people that support the Democratic Alliance, but they say they are in favor of the Western Cape should do its own thing. And I think the pressure because of that is also on the Democratic Alliance. Because what has the Democratic Alliance do since? They suddenly now came with a powers bill and tried to get powers devolved to the Western Cape. They want to have a say over rail and policing, etc. Why? Those are forms of self-determination. And they understand that the pressure is building up, and they're trying to alleviate the pressure by trying to get hold of those kind of powers. So that's a movement in the same direction. And you can look at all the movements internationally. You go through certain processes right through the whole process, and referendums form part of that. If I could just come back to the multi-party charter, which I didn't respond to. The multi-party charter is a fantastic development, if I may put it that way. Why? It makes it possible to get rid of the ANC in a democratic way by creating the best vehicle to achieve that. Why? The multi-party charter is not a coalition agreement. It's a pre-election agreement between political parties that agreed on a certain vision, they've agreed on certain principles, they've agreed on certain priorities as different political parties, and they feel strongly about that. And all that they've said was that in case they can form a majority after the election, they will come together and form a coalition government. Now it's difficult, and there's no doubt this is the most unpredictable election since 1994. Nobody knows what's going to play out, and that's why I just love politics. It's fascinating. It's like opening a lucky packet. We don't know what's going to jump out of there.
Game changer.
It's a game changer situation. It's the first election that is not predictable. Nobody knows. How low will the ANC go? It's like that Jai thing. So we'll have to see where the ANC ends up. And that creates possibility. So the multi-party charter has said from the beginning, we are committed to form a coalition government if possible. But that means, and people talk percentages, I talk numbers. This place behind us that elect a new speaker, and it seems we're going to have a vacancy soon. And that place that elects the president within 14 days after the election consists of 400 members. I need 201. That's all. 201. Then we can elect our own speaker, and we can elect the president, and that president can then, in terms of the powers of the Constitution, appoint his or her cabinet and start to govern. Who knows what could happen? For example, let's say the multi-party charter do not get to 201. But there are going to be other parties who are not within the charter who are going to get seats. There's no doubt. And then I think one should step back for 1 second and remember what happened with the election in Johannesburg after the 2021 local government election. No party came out of there with a majority. And we couldn't agree before the election of a mayor in terms of what we're going to do. But it's a secret ballot. And this is also going to be a secret ballot. And who knows? Someone may get nominated. And the ANC will nominate their president. I think it will be Mr. Ramaphosa. And then nobody knows. When people vote in secret, parties may unite behind closed doors in a secret ballot to say, first step, get the ANC out. And by coincidence, even without a coalition, elect somebody else as the president. Then it will be up to that person to see how he or she puts a government together that can be stable and govern. It could end up as a minority government, or it could end up, if that person accommodates other groupings or views in an executive, in some kind of a stable status quo, quid pro quo, balance of power that can take South Africa forward. It just may be that everybody across the spectrum is so fed up with the ANC that step one is remove the ANC. I don't know.
Anybody else?
Right.
Or forever hold your peace.
Don't hold your vote.
Ja, but not your vote. We need.
Dankie Gert. Kan ek net van my kant af sê baie dankie vir almal wat hier was, lede van die pers en van kollegas wat gekom het. Ek dink dit is belangrik. Die belangrikste is dat mense moet gaan stem. Nobody can stay out of it. And if we say it's going to be a fascinating election, nobody, not a single person can afford to sit back and say, well, I'm going to watch this show. No, you can't.
Yeah.
Whatever you believe, go out and exercise your right to vote and further that view. And in the end, we say we're a democracy, then the democracy will prevail and the will of the people will in the end be what's going to happen, and we will have to accept that. Baie dankie. Groot waardering.
Everybody's welcome to some coffee.
Ja, asseblief. There's lots of refreshments and stuff. So please enjoy.
Oh, thank you. Well done, Courtney. Well done, well done.